Welcome to the fourth course in this specialization on interviewing and resume writing. In this course, you'll learn strategies for writing resumes, cover letters, and other correspondence related to landing a job you'll love. But first, I want to ask you a question. What is the real purpose of a resume? Here you see the overall hiring process you learned about in the first course. And here you see the resume review. If your resume passes review, you move on to the interview stage. If it doesn't, you're eliminated from the start. That tells you that a resume has one primary purpose: to convince an organization to invite you in for an interview, or at least for a phone interview. If that happens, you have an effective resume. This means your resume is a marketing document. It matches the key words for the competencies the organization has advertised for. It's nothing more than a marketing document, but it's nothing less, meaning it's attractive, easy to read, and mistake-free. It's your personal marketing representative, going out into the world and representing you. Many people mistakenly think of a resume as a summary of their entire life and career. When they write their resume, they stick in everything they've ever done and every bit of information about themselves. That is an unfortunate mistake. It produces generic resumes that fail to target the hiring organization, and as a result, often end up in the trash can. Don't ever forget that your resume is an advertisement. It needs to target a specific customer, namely the hiring organization, and often a specific audience, which means at the start, the resume screener. Effective advertisements appeal to a specific target customer. An advertisement for a luxury car has an upscale feel. An advertisement for a luxury home puts you in that imaginary setting and makes you feel like you're already there. And a winning resume works like an effective advertisement. It mirrors the environment of the hiring organization. Objectives, experience, and accomplishments match the key words in the job description. The level of vocabulary and industry-specific terms are those used by the organization. A winning resume simply feels right to the hiring organization. This idea from Michael Jordan captures the spirit of a winning resume. You want your resume to impress the hiring organization, to create interest, to persuade the organization to call, to say, this candidate is special. This candidate has the right mind, the right skills, and the right motivation. A resume written with that in mind will look very different from a piece written merely as a catalog of your job history. It will clearly and concisely demonstrate that you have the potential to help the hiring organization be successful. It will contain the best evidence to support that claim. It will be free of any irrelevant information that distracts from that claim. A winning resume will be focused on a specific organization, a specific position, and a specific audience. White space will serve to help focus the reader's attention. Fonts that are easy to read also serve to focus the resume. A winning resume is powerful. It uses potent action words that make you sound like a doer and an achiever. It uses explicit numbers and specific details that add credibility to your accomplishments. And a winning resume is concise. It makes a point and makes it clearly. It uses bullets to help the reader zero in on your most outstanding achievements. It uses small blocks of text that are easy to scan. Now you know the real purpose of a resume is to win an interview, and you know that to do that, the resume must be focused. How are you going to accomplish that focus? By highlighting those parts of your background that provide evidence you have the competencies the hiring organization is looking for. That's what you'll learn about in the next lesson. To move your resume to the top of the applicant pile and land an interview, your resume must be focused. Focused on the competencies desired by the hiring organization. So let's take a moment to review the organizational thinking behind competency-based hiring. Remember that competencies identify what top performers do to achieve success. Competencies include skills, but they also include abilities and behaviors, as well as knowledge that is fundamental to the use of a skill. You can think of competencies as the key characteristics that help successful performers be successful. Most importantly, competencies describe those successful behaviors in terms that are observable. For example, here is an entry from a competency dictionary. It describes mid-level proficiency in one area of team leadership. Team leadership is here defined as taking on a leadership role to help others achieve excellent results. One of the components of competency at this level is being able to build a strong team. You can see the actions that go into that, from identifying gaps in team expertise to coaching to delegating responsibility. That's just one entry from a competency dictionary. It might be used for a mid-level manager. I hope you can see from it how an organization can use a set of competencies to describe a job profile. Just as a blueprint guides the building of a house, a competency architecture can guide the development of job descriptions. Such an architecture provides a common set of rules that create consistency and continuity across every job in an organization. It gives organizations objective criteria they can use to evaluate performance. It also gives everyone in an organization a shared language for talking about job requirements and work performance. All this has tremendous value. That's why top-tier organizations today use competencies. This is just a short list of those that do. All these organizations have to deal with the fact that the cost of hires has gone up, like the cost of everything else. That means the value of good hires has gone up, and the penalty for bad hires has gotten worse. It's become more and more important for organizations like these to make good hiring decisions. That's why they've turned to competency-based systems. That's why behavioral interviews play such an important role today. The simple fact is the hiring process has evolved, just like other technologies. And one of the key evolutions is what you've been learning about, competency-based systems. And you've also been learning throughout this specialization a fundamental strategy to succeed as a job hunter, namely to think from the perspective of the hiring organization. Consider this thought from computing pioneer Alan Kay. He's well known for his observation that, quote, "the best way to predict the future is to invent it," end quote. But he had this to say about perspective. You can take this to heart, especially when it comes to job hunting. Most candidates think about themselves, their needs, their wants. But if you can think from the perspective of the hiring organization, you'll be that much smarter and that much further ahead of your competition. All this is to say you need to tailor your resume to the new hiring technologies. More and more organizations use LinkedIn and other sites to search for candidates. They use competency-based approaches in their resume screening software. They use competency-based behavioral interviews in managing their hiring decisions. They use competency-based training and competency-based pay systems to help them manage their training, compensation, and promotion decisions. And finally, organizations list positions with clearly identified competencies. But most candidates still write resumes and still prepare for interviews the same way they did in the past. They've not adapted to how employers today make hiring decisions. And that means that what you need to do is take the time to position yourself differently than candidates have in the past. You've learned about this from the beginning in this specialization, how to demonstrate your competencies, how to position yourself for a specific opportunity, how to prepare for behavioral interviews, and now how to write competency-based resumes. You might be wondering if this means you should tailor your resume for each position that you're responding to. Well, I'd say only if you want a chance to get the job. Forget about the one-size-fits-all resume. Remember, the resume is a strategic marketing piece, not a tell-all autobiography. You don't need to include every job you've ever held. You don't need to list all your accomplishments. You tailor your entire resume to support your specific objective. There is absolutely no reason to include information that doesn't do this. In this day and age, with the technology you have, the only obstacle to creating tailored resumes is your own willingness to put in the effort. If you're not willing to put in the effort, don't be surprised if you're beaten out by someone who is. In the next lessons, you'll learn the 6-step approach to resume writing that I recommend. Your first step is to identify competencies for the position. The research you've learned to do will be key here. Then you'll think about what you've done that demonstrates expertise or experience with each of the competencies. You'll use your accomplishments journal, together with a self-questionnaire, to develop accomplishment statements for as many of the competencies as you can. Then you'll write a keyword-rich summary section that emphasizes your experience and strengths related to the key competencies for the position. You'll personalize that section to show how your why aligns with the needs of the hiring organization. You'll determine which resume format best fits your objectives and write the first draft. You'll then add additional sections, for example, education or publications, as needed to flesh out the resume. Finally, you'll polish the resume for power and impact. You'll prioritize competency-related phrases in your summary section and competency-based accomplishments within the resume. You'll deploy power-packed action words to upsell your experience. From there, you finalize the resume and prep it in whatever formats you need: electronic, plain text, hard copy. In the following lessons, you'll see they all have their place. In the last lesson, you learned about a 6-step approach to resume writing. The first step is to identify relevant competencies for the position. Taking this step means you're thinking from the beginning about the needs of the hiring organization. You're putting yourself in the mind of the hiring manager. The hiring manager has communicated needed competencies through the job description or the job posting. So your first challenge is to decipher this description. In the simplest case, an organization lists the required competencies directly. More and more organizations are making this choice. However, you may see competencies described as dimensions or characteristics, or what is commonly seen, keys to success. This might be rephrased as a successful candidate will, and then there will be behaviors described, but the idea is the same. You may also find competencies listed under skills, perhaps critical skills, or simply required skills. Finally, competencies may be alluded to under responsibilities or primary responsibilities, or sometimes job duties. However they're described, the underlying characteristics, behavior, knowledge, and skills required to differentiate performance are what you're looking for. This might sound trivial, but you'd be surprised at how many applicants ignore this. It's been estimated that most applicants spend less than 50 seconds reading a job description before they apply. They take a shotgun approach to submitting a standard resume. Then they wonder why they don't get any calls. That's not what you're going to do. You're going to think your application through from the perspective of the hiring manager. When the hiring organization posts a job description, it includes specific keywords for the knowledge, skills, and abilities the hiring manager is looking for. Your resume may be eliminated if it doesn't contain these key skill words. Many employers use software that scans resume for the key skill words and automatically rejects the resumes that do not contain these words or phrases. Say you find a posting that matches a job you want. There are 3 important areas you should focus on in a job ad to tailor your resume to that specific position. First, you should make sure your resume is a role match. That means your target job title should match the title being advertised. It should also be towards the top of your resume. This will catch the eye of the hiring manager and make it easy for an applicant tracking system to score a match between your resume and the job posting. Next, you'll want to make sure you have a value match. Employers are looking for candidates that are a good fit for their environment. So find overlap between your previous responsibilities and qualifications to show what value you can bring to the organization. Look for behavioral competencies such as work ethic or personality traits. Use the employer's language. Finally, make sure you have a skill match. Identify the competencies from the job ad and mirror the same language in your resume. Include your educational background, work experiences, and transferable skills that show you're equipped to do the job with the competencies you've developed throughout your career. Now you're thinking along with the hiring manager. You've made sure to use specific keywords that communicate the competencies that the hiring manager is looking for. The job description is the place to start, but you still need to do several things on your own to further identify the competencies for the position and to be sure those competencies are what you love to do. If you want to land a job that you'll love, you want to be clear in your mind that the position calls for what drives you and inspires you. Going beyond the job description, think about what the obvious competencies for the position would be. In the attached readings, you'll find descriptions of typical competencies for common positions. For example, a standard competency used by almost all organizations is a results or achievement orientation. Taking initiative, setting challenging goals, and making efforts to meet or exceed those goals are obvious competencies. Next, look at advertisements and postings from competitors for similar positions. See what competencies they've identified. Then try to determine if the same competencies work for the position you're interested in. There are a number of places you can go to broaden your list. Here you practice the research skills you learned in the successful interviewing course. Professional associations, the website from the organization you're interested in, possible connections in the organization. All these can help you compile a comprehensive list of competencies. You can also consult with the competency lists attached to this lesson. Ask yourself what you would look for if you were the hiring manager. Then think about the level of expertise within each competency area that the organization will probably need for the position. Remember to include not only technical competencies, but also behavioral competencies that relate to the culture of the organization. Finally, look through your list and identify the competencies you think are most critical. Limit the list to the 10 to 15 most important. Consider how important each is to being successful in the position you're interested in. The hiring organization is most likely using ranks or weighting on the critical competencies, and you want to anticipate that in your own ranking. You'll use your ranking later when you prioritize the elements of your resume. I hope you can recognize that this approach to writing a resume is different from what most people do. This approach looks first at what the hiring organization needs. The traditional way of writing a resume looks first at your background, focuses on your skills and accomplishments, then hopes to match them to a job opening. A winning resume, on the other hand, always puts the needs of the hiring organization first. At the same time, all of your efforts work from the inside out. Remember the golden circle you worked with earlier. Your deepest reason why you do what you do drives your job hunting process. So of course it drives your resume writing process. Each resume you write tells the story not only of what you do, but why you do it. Such a resume invites an organization to hire you not just because you're qualified for the position, but because of who you are. That's what makes you stand out.